The morning sun streamed through the tall glass windows of the Riverside Conservatory, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. It was audition day and the building buzzed with nervous energy. Teenagers clutched sheet music with trembling hands, some pacing back and forth, others sitting rigid in their chairs, eyes closed as they mentally rehearsed their pieces one last time. Among the crowd of aspiring musicians, a young girl named Lily walked through the entrance with her mother by her side. She moved carefully, her white cane tapping a steady rhythm against the floor. Each tap echoed slightly in the grand lobby, a soft click-click-click that seemed to announce her arrival. She was 17 years old, with long dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a modest blue dress that her mother had helped her choose that morning. Lily had been blind since she was 6 years old. A rare disease had slowly stolen her sight over the course of a year, turning her world from colors and faces into darkness and shadows. But in that darkness she had found something else. She had found music. Her parents had enrolled her in piano lessons when she was just 4, back when she could still see. After she lost her vision, everyone expected her to quit. Instead, she practiced harder than ever. The piano became her eyes, her voice, her way of seeing the world. As Lily and her mother entered the waiting area, conversations seemed to pause. Heads turned. Some people looked with genuine curiosity, others with uncomfortable pity, and a few with barely concealed skepticism. Lily could feel the weight of their stares even though she couldn't see them. She had developed a sixth sense for these moments, the way the air in a room changes when people are watching you, judging you before you've even had a chance to prove yourself. Her mother guided her to an empty seat near the back of the room. "There's a chair right here, sweetie," she whispered, helping Lily settle in. Lily folded her cane carefully and placed it beside her, then smoothed her dress over her knees. Her hands were shaking slightly and she clasped them together to steady herself. She had been preparing for this audition for months, practicing 5 hours a day, sometimes more. This scholarship meant everything to her. It was her chance to study at one of the best music schools in the country, to work with world-class instructors, to prove that she belonged. On the other side of the waiting room sat a boy named Ryan. He was 18, tall and confident, with perfectly styled blonde hair and expensive clothes that screamed money and privilege. Ryan was something of a celebrity in the classical music world. He had won 3 national piano competitions by the time he was 16. His performances had been featured in magazines. Music professors spoke his name with reverence. He sat surrounded by a small group of admirers, other talented students who hung on his every word, laughing at his jokes, nodding eagerly when he spoke about technique and interpretation. Ryan noticed Lily almost immediately. His eyes lingered on her white cane, then traveled to her face. He leaned toward the girl sitting next to him and said something in a low voice. The girl glanced at Lily, then quickly looked away, uncomfortable. But Ryan wasn't finished. He spoke a little louder this time, just enough for the people around him to hear. "I can't believe they're letting just anyone audition now," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I thought this was supposed to be a competitive program, not a charity case." A few of his friends laughed nervously. Others looked away, pretending they hadn't heard. One girl, to her credit, frowned and said, "Ryan, that's not cool." But Ryan just shrugged, that trademark smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Lily heard every word. She sat perfectly still, her face calm, but her mother felt her hand tighten slightly. Her mother leaned close. "Lily, we don't have to stay. We can leave right now if you want." But Lily shook her head slowly. "It's okay, Mom," she said quietly. "I've heard worse," and she had. She had heard it all. The whispers in school hallways. The comments from people who assumed she couldn't do things simply because she couldn't see. The well-meaning teachers who suggested she try something more realistic than pursuing music professionally. The relatives who praised every small accomplishment with exaggerated enthusiasm, as if she were a child who had just learned to tie her shoes. Lily had learned to build a thick skin around her heart, to let the words bounce off without penetrating too deep. But still, they stung. Every single time they stung, the minutes ticked by slowly. One by one, students were called into the auditorium to perform. Each time the door opened, conversations would stop, everyone straining to hear the muffled sound of piano music filtering through. Some performances were met with polite applause. Others inspired whispers of admiration, When one particularly talented girl finished her piece, even Ryan nodded approvingly. Finally, Ryan's name was called. He stood up, adjusted his jacket, and strode toward the auditorium doors with the confidence of someone who had already won. Lily heard his footsteps, heard the door open and close, and then, after a brief pause, heard the beginning of his performance. Even through the thick walls, she could tell he was good. Very good. He was playing Rachmaninoff, one of the most technically demanding composers in the classical repertoire. Every note was crisp, perfectly timed, executed with mathematical precision. It was the kind of performance that made other musicians shake their heads in awe, wondering how anyone could make something so difficult sound so effortless. When Ryan returned to the waiting room several minutes later, he was greeted with enthusiastic congratulations. "That was incredible," someone said. "The scholarship is definitely yours," another added. Ryan accepted the praise with practiced humility, but his eyes betrayed his satisfaction. He knew he had nailed it. In his mind, this was already over. Time continued to crawl forward. More students came and went. The waiting room gradually emptied. Lily sat quietly listening, her mind running through her own piece measure by measure, her fingers occasionally twitching as if playing invisible keys. Then she heard her name. "Lily Chen, you're next." Her mother stood first, offering her arm. Lily grasped it and rose to her feet, retrieving her cane. Together they walked toward the auditorium doors. Lily could feel every eye in the room on her back. She heard someone whisper, "Do you think she can actually play?" She heard someone else shush them quickly. The auditorium doors opened and a wave of cool air washed over her face. The space felt enormous, and she could sense its vastness in the way sound moved through it. Her mother guided her down the aisle toward the stage, their footsteps echoing softly. Lily's heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. They reached the stage stairs. 5 steps up," her mother whispered. Lily climbed them carefully, her cane finding each one. At the top, her mother squeezed her hand. "You've got this, baby. I'll be right here in the front row." Lily nodded, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. She took a deep breath and began walking across the stage alone. Her cane tapped against the wood, helping her navigate. She counted her steps, visualizing the layout she had memorized during her campus visit weeks ago. 12 steps forward. Turn slightly right. 3 more steps. Her hand found the piano bench. Relief flooded through her. She folded her cane and set it carefully on the floor beside the bench, then lowered herself onto the seat. Her fingers reached out and touched the keys gently, greeting them like old friends. She adjusted her position slightly, finding the perfect distance, the perfect height. The room was completely silent. Hundreds of eyes watched her. The 3 judges sat at their table with pens poised over their evaluation sheets. In the audience, Ryan leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. Lily placed her hands on the keys, closed her eyes, a habit from childhood that she maintained even though it made no difference now, and took one final deep breath. It was time to show them what she could do. Lily sat at the piano, her fingers resting lightly on the keys. The silence in the auditorium was thick, almost suffocating. She could hear someone cough nervously in the back row. She could hear the slight rustle of paper as one of the judges shifted their evaluation sheet. She could even hear her own heartbeat, steady and strong in her ears. She had chosen to play Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. It was a piece that most pianists spent years mastering, a piece that demanded not just technical skill, but deep emotional understanding. Her teacher had warned her that it might be too ambitious for an audition. "Choose something safer," he had said. "Something that shows your technique without taking too many risks." But Lily had refused. This piece spoke to her in a way that nothing else did. It told a story of darkness and light, of struggle and triumph, of finding beauty in unexpected places. It was her story. She began to play. The first notes floated into the air, soft and tentative, like the first drops of rain before a storm. Lily's fingers moved with careful precision, finding each key without hesitation. People who didn't know her often wondered how she could play without seeing. The answer was simple. She had memorized every piece she played, note by note, measure by measure. Her fingers knew exactly where to go. The piano wasn't a puzzle she had to solve. It was an extension of herself. But there was something more happening here, something that went beyond mere memorization. As Lily played, something shifted in the room. The music she created wasn't just technically correct. It was alive. It breathed. It felt. In the front row, Lily's mother sat with tears already streaming down her face. She had heard her daughter play this piece hundreds of times during practice, but something about this performance was different. Maybe it was the stakes. Maybe it was the emotion of the moment. Or maybe Lily was simply pouring everything she had into these notes, holding nothing back. The judges leaned forward in their seats, their pens forgotten. The head judge, a stern woman in her 60s who had heard thousands of auditions over her career, felt goosebumps rise on her arms. She had expected competence, perhaps even a decent performance. She had not expected this. In the back of the auditorium, Ryan sat frozen in his seat. His smirk had vanished. His arms, which had been crossed confidently across his chest, now hung loosely at his sides. He watched Lily's hands move across the keys, watched her body sway gently with the music's rhythm, watched her face as it reflected every emotion the piece demanded: joy, sorrow, longing, hope. The music grew louder, more intense. Lily's fingers flew across the keys now, attacking the more aggressive passages with controlled power. This was the section where many pianists faltered, where the technical demands became almost overwhelming. But Lily didn't falter. She played as if the notes were coming from somewhere deep inside her, as if she wasn't reading music at all but simply channeling something pure and true. A woman in the third row reached for her husband's hand and squeezed it tight. A teenage boy who had auditioned earlier that day felt his eyes begin to water, though he couldn't explain why. An elderly man who had donated money to the conservatory for decades closed his eyes and let the music wash over him, remembering his own youth, his own dreams, all the things he had loved and lost. This was what great music could do. It could make strangers feel connected. It could make people remember what it meant to be human. It could break down walls and touch something essential that lived in everyone's heart. The piece moved into its quieter middle section, and Lily's playing became gentle again, almost fragile. Her touch on the keys was so delicate that people in the back rows had to strain to hear. But that softness made the music even more powerful. It drew everyone in, made them lean forward, made them hold their breath so they wouldn't miss a single note. Lily's face was peaceful now, almost serene. She wasn't thinking about the judges or the scholarship or the people watching her. She wasn't thinking about Ryan's cruel comment or the whispers that had followed her into the auditorium. She wasn't even thinking about the notes she was playing. She was simply living inside the music, letting it flow through her like water, like light, like love. Her teacher had once told her something that she had never forgotten. The difference between a good pianist and a great one, he had said, is that a good pianist plays the notes on the page. A great pianist plays what lives between the notes. The silence, the breath, the story that the composer was trying to tell but couldn't quite put into words. Lily understood this in a way that most sighted pianists never would. When you couldn't see, you learned to pay attention to everything else, the space between sounds, the way one note led to another, the texture of a chord, the weight of a melody, the color of a harmony. Yes, color. Lily experienced music in colors, even though she couldn't remember what colors looked like anymore. This piece was dark blue and silver, with flashes of gold and deep purple. It was the color of a night sky that she could no longer see but could imagine perfectly in her mind. The music built toward its dramatic conclusion. Lily's whole body was engaged now, rocking slightly, her arms lifting and falling, every muscle working in harmony to produce the sounds she heard in her head. The technical difficulty of this section was staggering, but she made it look effortless, natural, as if this was the only way these notes could possibly be played. And then, with a final cascade of notes that seemed to tumble over each other like a waterfall, the piece ended. Lily's hands came to rest on the keys. She sat very still, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths, her face flushed with exertion and emotion. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved, nobody breathed. The silence was absolute. Then the auditorium exploded with sound. People leaped to their feet, applauding wildly. The elderly donor was on his feet faster than anyone, clapping so hard his hands hurt. The teenage boy who had cried was applauding and laughing at the same time, shaking his head in disbelief. The judges themselves stood up, something that almost never happened during auditions, their evaluation sheets sliding forgotten to the floor. Lily sat at the piano, slightly startled by the reaction. She could hear the applause thundering around her, feel the vibrations of it through the stage floor. She had known the performance went well, but this response was beyond anything she had expected. Her mother was sobbing openly now, her hands pressed to her mouth. She wanted to run up on stage and hug her daughter, but she forced herself to stay in her seat, to let Lily have this moment for herself. In the back row, Ryan found himself clapping too. His hands moved automatically. Even as his mind struggled to process what he had just witnessed, he had been so sure of himself, so confident that his technical perfection would win the scholarship easily. He had spent years training with the best teachers, practicing 8 hours a day, perfecting every aspect of his technique. He could play faster, cleaner, more accurately than almost anyone his age. But what he had just heard was something different entirely. It was something he had been chasing his whole life without quite understanding what it was. Soul, heart, truth. Whatever you wanted to call it. Lily had it in abundance, and Ryan suddenly realized that for all his talent and training, he might not have it at all. The head judge walked to the front of the auditorium and raised her hand for silence. The applause gradually died down, though several people continued clapping until their neighbors shushed them. "Miss Chen," the judge said, her voice thick with emotion. "That was extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. Thank you for sharing your gift with us today." Lily stood up carefully, found her cane, and gave a small bow in the direction of the judge's table. She couldn't see the standing ovation she was receiving. Couldn't see the looks of awe on people's faces. Couldn't see Ryan slumped in his seat with his whole worldview crumbling around him. But she could feel it. She could feel it in the warmth of the applause, in the energy that filled the room, in the way the air itself seemed to vibrate with appreciation. As she walked off the stage, guided once again by her mother, Lily allowed herself a small smile. She had done it. She had shown them exactly what she was capable of, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. 2 weeks later, the acceptance letters went out. Lily received hers on a Tuesday afternoon. Her mother's hand shook as she opened the envelope, her voice breaking as she read the words aloud. Not only had Lily been accepted, but she had been awarded the Chancellor's full scholarship, the conservatory's most prestigious honor. It covered everything: tuition, room and board, private lessons with master teachers, even a stipend for living expenses. Lily sat on the couch, unable to speak. She had hoped for acceptance, maybe even a partial scholarship. But this was beyond her wildest dreams. Her mother hugged her so tight she could barely breathe, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. Ryan also received an acceptance letter. He had been awarded a substantial scholarship, one that any other year would have made him the top recipient. But not this year. This year, that honor had gone to someone else. To Lily. He read the letter 3 times, each time hoping the words would somehow change. They didn't. Ryan crumpled the letter in his fist and threw it across his bedroom. It bounced off the wall and landed on the floor, a sad little ball of paper that represented everything he thought he deserved but didn't get. His father found him an hour later, sitting at his piano but not playing, just staring at the keys. "What's wrong?" his father asked, though he had already heard about the scholarship results through the conservatory's donor network. "Nothing," Ryan said flatly. "Ryan, you got into one of the best music schools in the country. You should be celebrating." "I should have won the Chancellor's scholarship." "You know I should have." His father sighed and sat down on the bench beside him. "You played brilliantly. Everyone said so, but not brilliantly enough, apparently." Ryan's voice was bitter. "They gave it to her. The blind girl. It's probably some diversity thing, right? Makes them look good." His father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised Ryan. "I was there, son. I heard her play. And I'm going to tell you something that might be hard to hear. She earned it." Ryan turned to look at his father, betrayed. "You have incredible technical skill," his father continued. "But what she has is something different. Something that can't really be taught. You play the piano beautifully. She makes the piano sing." Ryan wanted to argue, to defend himself, to explain all the reasons why he was better. But the words stuck in his throat because somewhere deep down he knew his father was right. He had known it the moment he heard Lily play. The fall semester began 3 weeks later. The conservatory was buzzing with energy as new students moved into the dormitories, dragging suitcases and instrument cases through the hallways. Lily's mother helped her settle into her room, a small single on the third floor with a window that faced the practice building. Not that the view mattered to Lily, but her mother described it anyway, wanting her daughter to know every detail of her new home. Ryan lived 2 floors up in a larger room that his father's donation had secured. He unpacked his expensive clothes, set up his sound system, and arranged his competition trophies on the shelf where everyone could see them. But the trophies felt hollow now. They were proof of past victories, but they didn't guarantee future ones. The first few weeks of classes were intense. The conservatory didn't coddle its students. Everyone here was talented. Everyone here had been the best at their previous schools. Now they were all competing against each other, fighting for the attention of prestigious teachers, for spots in recitals, for the limited opportunities that could launch a real career in music. Lily navigated the challenges with determination. She had a mobility instructor who helped her learn the campus layout, counting steps and memorizing routes between buildings. She used a special Braille music notation system and recorded all her lectures so she could review them later. Her classmates watched her with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Some offered help, which she gratefully accepted. Others kept their distance, perhaps unsure how to interact with someone who was different. Ryan kept his distance too, but for different reasons. He couldn't shake the jealousy that ate at him whenever he saw her. It wasn't fair, he told himself. He had worked so hard. He had sacrificed so much, and yet she had swept in and taken what should have been his without even being able to see the keys. But he also couldn't stop thinking about her performance at the audition. Late at night when he couldn't sleep, he would replay it in his mind, trying to understand what made it so special. He began doing something he had never done before. He started listening to recordings of himself playing. Really listening, the way an audience member would listen, not the way a performer listens while checking for mistakes. What he heard disturbed him. His playing was perfect, yes. Every note was exactly where it should be. The timing was impeccable. The dynamics were textbook correct. But it was cold, clinical, like a computer had played it. There was no warmth, no personality, no story. It was technically flawless and emotionally empty. One evening, about a month into the semester, Ryan was practicing late in one of the soundproof rehearsal rooms. The practice building was supposed to close at 10, but students with keycard access could stay later. Ryan had been working on a Beethoven sonata for hours, playing the same passage over and over, trying to get it exactly right. He took a break around midnight, stepping into the hallway to stretch his legs and clear his head. That's when he heard it. Music, coming from one of the other practice rooms. He followed the sound down the corridor until he found himself standing outside room 7. Through the small window in the door, he could see Lily sitting at the piano, but she wasn't playing a piece. She was just experimenting, her fingers wandering across the keys with no particular pattern or purpose. She would play a few notes, pause, play them again slightly differently, pause again. She was humming along, her face scrunched up in concentration. Sometimes she would smile at a particular combination of notes. Sometimes she would shake her head and try something else. Ryan watched for several minutes, fascinated. This wasn't practice in the traditional sense. She wasn't drilling scales or perfecting a difficult passage. She was exploring, playing, finding joy in the simple act of making sound. Then something changed. The wandering notes began to coalesce into something more structured. A melody emerged, sad and beautiful. Lily's humming stopped as she focused on the piano, developing the melody, adding harmony, building it into something complete. Ryan realized he was watching her compose, creating music from nothing but her imagination and her fingers. But then the music stopped abruptly. Lily sat very still for a moment. Then Ryan heard something that shocked him. She was crying. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but quiet tears that she tried to muffle with her hand. "Why does it have to be so hard?" she whispered to herself, her voice breaking. "Why can't they just see me as a musician instead of the blind girl who plays piano?" Ryan stepped back from the window, feeling like he had intruded on something private. He had never considered what it might be like for her. He had been so focused on his own jealousy, on feeling like she had taken something from him, that he hadn't thought about the pressure she must be under. Every day she had to prove herself. Every performance was scrutinized not just for its quality, but as evidence of what a blind person could or couldn't do. People praised her, yes, but their praise often came wrapped in surprise, as if they hadn't expected her to be capable. And Ryan realized something else. He had contributed to that. His cruel comment at the audition, his resentment, his refusal to acknowledge her talent on its own merits. He had seen her as a threat, as someone who didn't deserve her success. But she wasn't a threat. She was just another musician trying to make it, dealing with obstacles he couldn't even imagine. The crying stopped. Ryan heard Lily take a deep breath, then start playing again. The sad melody returned, but this time she pushed through it, developed it, transformed it into something powerful and defiant. It was like watching someone pick themselves up after a fall, dust themselves off, and keep going. Ryan walked slowly back to his practice room. He sat down at his piano but didn't play. Instead, he thought about his father's words. "She makes the piano sing." He thought about Lily crying alone in a practice room at midnight. He thought about the way she explored music with such joy and curiosity. He thought about his own approach to piano, the rigid discipline, the obsession with perfection, the way he had turned something beautiful into a competition he had to win. Maybe his father was right. Maybe technical skill wasn't enough. Maybe being the best pianist meant more than just playing all the right notes. For the first time in his life, Ryan wondered if he had been doing this all wrong. And for the first time since the audition, his jealousy began to crack, letting in something else. Not quite respect yet, but the beginning of understanding. The first small seed of change. The announcement came during Monday morning assembly. The conservatory director, a distinguished man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, stood at the podium and cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. Students settled into their seats, curious about what warranted a special announcement. Every year, the director began, our winter showcase features performances by our most talented students. This year, I'm pleased to announce that our piano duet will be performed by two of our scholarship recipients. He paused for effect. Ryan Mitchell and Lily Chen. The auditorium erupted in whispers. Students turned to look at Ryan, then at Lily, who sat 3 rows behind him. Ryan felt his stomach drop. This had to be a mistake, a joke, anything but real. He turned in his seat and caught a glimpse of Lily's face. She looked just as shocked as he felt. After the assembly, Ryan went straight to the director's office. He didn't even bother knocking, just pushed open the door and walked in. The director looked up from his desk, unsurprised. I can't do this, Ryan said flatly. Pair me with someone else. Anyone else? The director leaned back in his chair, his expression calm. Sit down, Ryan. I don't want to sit down. I want a different partner. Sit down. The director's voice was firm now, leaving no room for argument. Ryan sat, jaw clenched, arms crossed. You're a brilliant pianist, the director said. One of the most technically gifted students we've ever had. But there's something missing in your playing, something essential. My playing is fine, Ryan shot back. Your playing is perfect, the director corrected. That's the problem. Music isn't about perfection. It's about connection, emotion, truth, and Lily has those things in abundance. I'm pairing you two together because you both have something to learn from each other. She can learn discipline and structure from you. And you... He paused, looking directly into Ryan's eyes. You can learn how to feel. Ryan wanted to argue, to defend himself, to explain that he did feel things when he played. But the words died in his throat because somewhere deep down, he wasn't sure that was true anymore. The showcase is in 8 weeks, the director continued. That gives you plenty of time to prepare. I suggest you put aside whatever issues you have and focus on creating something beautiful together. Dismissed. Ryan left the office feeling like he'd been punched in the gut. This was humiliating. Being forced to work with the person who had taken his scholarship, his recognition, his place at the top. And worse, being told that he needed to learn from her. Their first rehearsal was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon in practice room 12. Ryan arrived 10 minutes early, hoping to establish some sense of control over the situation. He sat at the piano, running through scales to warm up, trying to calm his nerves. Lily arrived exactly on time, guided by a student aide who helped her navigate the hallways. Room 12, the aide said. Piano is straight ahead about 15 feet. Ryan's already here. Thanks, Jessica, Lily said, and the aide left, closing the door behind her. The silence that followed was awkward and heavy. Ryan stopped playing. Lily stood by the door, her hand on her cane, waiting. The second piano is to your left, Ryan finally said, his voice stiff. About 10 feet. Thanks. Lily made her way carefully to the instrument, found the bench, and sat down. She set her cane on the floor and placed her hands on the keys, as if greeting an old friend. More silence. So, Lily said finally, I guess we should talk about what we're going to play. The director suggested we arrange something together, something that showcases both our styles. Ryan's tone was flat, businesslike. Okay, do you have any ideas? Not really, you? Lily hesitated. Maybe we could start by just playing something. Get a feel for how we work together. Ryan shrugged, even though she couldn't see it. Sure, whatever. They started with a simple Mozart piece, something they both knew well. But from the first measure, it was clear this wasn't going to be easy. Ryan played with his usual precision, strict tempo, exactly as written. Lily played with more freedom, adding slight variations in timing and dynamics, letting the music breathe. By the end of the first page, they were completely out of sync. Ryan stopped abruptly. You're rushing. I'm not rushing. You're playing it like a metronome. It's marked allegro. That means a specific tempo. Allegro means cheerful and quick, not mechanical and lifeless. Ryan's hands clenched into fists. My playing is not lifeless. I didn't mean... Lily stopped herself, took a breath. Look, maybe we just have different approaches. That's okay. We can figure this out, but they couldn't. Over the next hour, they tried 3 different pieces and couldn't get through any of them without stopping, starting over and arguing. Ryan wanted everything precise and controlled. Lily wanted the music to have room to express itself. They were speaking 2 completely different languages. Finally, frustrated and exhausted, Lily said, This isn't working. You think? Ryan's sarcasm was sharp. Maybe we should just tell the director we can't do this. Great idea. Let's both look like failures who can't handle a simple duet. Lily turned toward him, her face flushed. You know what your problem is? You're so busy trying to prove you're the best that you've forgotten why you started playing piano in the first place. And what's that supposed to mean? It means music is supposed to make you feel something. It's supposed to mean something. But for you, it's just a competition. Just another thing you have to win. Her words hit harder than Ryan expected. He opened his mouth to snap back, but nothing came out. Because she was right. When was the last time he had played purely for joy? When was the last time he had loved it instead of treating it like work? They ended the rehearsal in tense silence. Lily gathered her things and left, tapping her way down the hallway. Ryan sat alone at the piano for a long time, staring at the keys, feeling more lost than he had in years. The next rehearsal wasn't much better. Or the one after that. By the end of the second week, they had made almost no progress. The showcase was 6 weeks away and they didn't even have a piece selected, much less rehearsed. On their 4th rehearsal, Ryan arrived to find Lily already there, playing softly. But she wasn't playing a classical piece. It was something simpler, more modern, almost like a lullaby. He stood in the doorway, listening. When she finished, she turned toward the door as if she had known he was there all along. My mom used to sing that to me when I was little, she said quietly, before I lost my sight. I can barely remember her face anymore, but I remember that song. Ryan didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. He just walked to his piano and sat down. Can I show you something? Lily asked, her voice tentative. Okay. Play something simple. Anything. Just a scale or a chord progression. But do it with your eyes closed. Ryan frowned. Why? Just trust me. Please. He wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain his walls, but something in her voice made him comply. He closed his eyes and played a simple C major scale, then another, then a basic chord progression. Now, Lily said softly, stop thinking about your fingers. Stop thinking about the notes. Just feel the keys under your hands. Feel the way each note resonates in the wood. Listen to the way the sound fills the room. Ryan did as she asked, and slowly something shifted. Without the visual input, his other senses sharpened. He became aware of textures and sensations he normally ignored. The smoothness of the ivory keys, the vibration that traveled through the bench, the way each note seemed to have a color even though he wasn't seeing anything. That's better, Lily said. Can you feel the difference? And he could. Without his eyes open, without his brain analyzing every technical detail, the music became something else, something more intuitive, more honest. This is how I experience every piece, Lily explained. I can't see the notes on a page. I can't watch my hands. All I have is the feeling, the sound, the emotion. And maybe that's what's missing from your playing. You're so focused on doing it right that you've forgotten to feel it. Ryan opened his eyes slowly, blinking in the light. He looked at Lily, really looked at her for maybe the first time since they'd met. Not as his competition, not as the person who had taken something from him. Just as another musician trying to find truth in the music. "Can we try again?" he asked, his voice quieter now, less defensive. Lily smiled just a little. "Yeah, we can try again." This time, when they played together, Ryan kept his eyes closed. And slowly, very slowly, something began to change. Over the next few weeks, something remarkable happened. Ryan and Lily didn't just learn to play together. They learned to understand each other. Their rehearsals became less about fighting over tempo and dynamics and more about discovery. Ryan started showing up with his eyes already closed, ready to experience the music the way Lily did. And Lily began listening more carefully to Ryan's suggestions about structure and timing, recognizing that discipline could serve emotion rather than suppress it. They created their own arrangement, blending a classical Debussy piece with modern harmonies, something that honored tradition while making it their own. It was ambitious, technically challenging, and deeply personal. The music told a story about two different perspectives learning to see the world through each other's eyes. One evening, about 3 weeks before the showcase, they took a break from rehearsing. They were both exhausted, fingers sore, minds tired from concentration. Ryan grabbed 2 bottles of water from his bag and handed one to Lily, making sure her hand found it. "Thanks," she said, taking a long drink. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, something that would have been impossible a month ago. Ryan had learned that silence with Lily wasn't awkward. It was just peaceful. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan said finally. "And you don't have to answer if you don't want to." "Okay. What's it like?" Not being able to see. Lily tilted her head, considering. Most people ask that question out of pity or morbid curiosity. But Ryan's tone was different now. He genuinely wanted to understand. "Honestly, it's just my life," she said. "I don't really remember what seeing was like anymore. I was so young when it happened. Sometimes I miss things like not being able to see my mom's face or sunsets or the expression on someone's face when they're talking to me. But mostly I've just adapted. I experience the world differently than you do, but that doesn't mean I experience less of it." Ryan nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About how we all experience things differently. You taught me that music isn't about playing it the right way. It's about playing it your way, finding your own truth in it." Lily smiled. "You've taught me things too. Before working with you, my playing was all feeling and instinct. But you showed me that structure and discipline can actually make the emotion stronger. It's like building a house. You need a strong foundation, but that foundation is there to support something beautiful, not to limit it." "We make a good team," Ryan said, and he meant it. "Yeah," Lily agreed. "We do." The night of the winter showcase arrived cold and clear. The conservatory's concert hall was packed with students, faculty, parents, and music patrons from across the city. The lights dimmed and the program began with a string quartet, followed by a soprano soloist, then a jazz ensemble. Each performance was met with enthusiastic applause. Backstage, Ryan paced nervously while Lily sat quietly on a bench, her hands folded in her lap. She looked calm, but Ryan had learned to read her subtle tells, the way she was gripping her cane a little too tightly, the slight tension in her shoulders. "You nervous?" he asked, sitting down beside her. "Terrified," she admitted with a small laugh. "You?" "Same. We've got this, though. We've practiced enough. We know the piece inside and out." "It's not about the notes," Ryan said, echoing something she had told him weeks ago. "It's about what we're trying to say." Lily reached out and Ryan took her hand. It was a gesture of solidarity, of friendship, of trust. Two musicians who had started as rivals and had become something more important. Partners. Their names were announced. The audience applauded as they walked onto the stage. Ryan guided Lily carefully, their practiced coordination evident. They had walked this path dozens of times during rehearsals, making sure Lily knew exactly how many steps, exactly where to turn. They reached the twin pianos positioned at angles facing each other. Ryan held Lily's hand for just a moment longer than necessary. A silent message. "We've got this." Then they sat down at their respective instruments. The audience settled into expectant silence. Ryan looked across at Lily, and even though she couldn't see him, she seemed to sense his gaze. She nodded slightly and they began. The first notes floated into the air, delicate and tentative. Ryan's right hand carried the melody, while Lily's left hand provided a gentle counterpoint. It was a conversation in music, two voices speaking to each other, learning to harmonize. In the front row, Lily's mother clutched a tissue, already crying. She had watched her daughter struggle through so much, fight so hard to be taken seriously, and now here she was, sharing a stage as an equal with one of the conservatory's most celebrated students. A few rows back, Ryan's father sat with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He had been skeptical about this partnership, worried it would somehow diminish his son's reputation. But as he listened, his posture gradually softened. This was different from anything Ryan had performed before. It had warmth. It had soul. The music grew more complex, Ryan and Lily trading melodies back and forth, their playing weaving together like threads in a tapestry. There was a section where they played in perfect unison, their interpretations so aligned that it sounded like one instrument instead of two. Then they would diverge, creating tension and complexity before coming back together in resolution. Ryan played with his eyes closed now, just as he had practiced. Without sight, he relied entirely on his ears and his heart. He could hear every nuance of Lily's playing, could anticipate her slight variations in tempo, could respond to her emotional cues. They weren't just playing the same piece. They were creating something together in real time, a living conversation that existed only in this moment. The audience was utterly silent, hanging on every note. A young girl in the balcony leaned forward, her eyes wide with wonder. An elderly professor who had taught at the conservatory for 40 years found himself moved in a way he hadn't experienced in decades. A music journalist scribbled frantically in her notebook, knowing this was a performance people would talk about for years. The piece moved into its emotional climax. Ryan's left hand thundered in the bass register while Lily's right hand soared in the treble, two opposing forces pushing against each other before finally finding harmony. It was a musical representation of their journey, conflict, struggle, understanding, and ultimately unity. Then came the resolution. The music softened, became gentle again, but it was different from the beginning. It was the gentleness of wisdom rather than innocence, the peace that comes after a storm. Their hands moved together, slower now, each note deliberate and meaningful. The final chord rang out, then slowly faded into silence. Ryan and Lily held their positions, letting the last vibrations die away completely. Neither of them moved. They sat in the stillness, knowing that something special had just happened, not wanting to break the spell. Then the audience erupted. People leaped to their feet, applauding thunderously. The standing ovation went on, wave after wave of appreciation washing over the stage. Ryan opened his eyes and looked at Lily. She was smiling, tears streaming down her face. He realized his own eyes were wet too. They stood and took a bow together. Ryan reached out and found Lily's hand, and they bowed again, this time as true partners. The applause somehow grew even louder. Backstage, after the adrenaline had faded and the crowds had dispersed, Ryan and Lily sat together in the green room. They were exhausted, emotionally drained, but glowing with the satisfaction of a job well done. "We did it," Lily said softly. "We really did." "Thank you," Lily said, turning toward him, "for giving this a chance, for being willing to learn. I know it wasn't easy for you." Ryan shook his head. "I should be thanking you. You taught me what I was missing. All those years of training, all those competitions, and I was just going through the motions. You reminded me why I started playing in the first place. Because music is magical. It's the closest thing we have to speaking directly to someone's soul." They sat quietly for a moment, letting the weight of the evening settle over them. "You know what the funny thing is?" Ryan said finally. "I spent so much time being jealous of you, thinking you had taken something from me. But you didn't take anything. You gave me something. You gave me back my love for music," Lily smiled. "And you gave me something too. You showed me that I don't always have to prove myself, that sometimes it's okay to let structure guide you, to trust in preparation and discipline." We balanced each other out. Within days, video of their performance spread across social media. Music blogs wrote articles analyzing their unique partnership. The local newspaper ran a feature story with the headline, "Two Students, Two Perspectives, One Extraordinary Performance." Messages poured in from around the world, people saying how the performance had moved them, inspired them, reminded them of what music could be. But for Ryan and Lily, the real victory wasn't the attention or the praise. It was what they had discovered about themselves and each other. Ryan had learned that perfection without passion was empty. Lily had learned that she didn't have to carry the weight of representation alone, that she could be vulnerable and still be strong. Most importantly, they had both learned that sometimes the people we see as obstacles are actually exactly who we need to become better versions of ourselves. Ryan had needed someone to teach him how to feel. Lily had needed someone to show her that accepting help wasn't weakness. Months later, when people asked them about that night, they would both say the same thing. It wasn't about a blind girl proving she could play piano or a prodigy learning humility. It was about two musicians finding harmony, not just in their music, but in their understanding of what it meant to be human. And that was the real magic. Not the notes they played, but the connection they made. Not the perfection they achieved, but the honesty they shared. Music, after all, was never really about the instrument. It was about the heart behind it, the story it told, the way it reminded us that despite our differences, we all speak the same language when we speak from the soul.